All right. So now we are in chapter 17 of Matthew, along with the other Gospels. So we saw Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus, and as we look in Luke's Gospel, chapter 9 and verse 31, they were speaking about the departure which he was about to fulfill in Jerusalem. And Peter and his companions were sleepy. They slept, as always. Whenever Jesus prays, they sleep. Okay. So, but when they were fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. Now, how could they recognize it was Moses and Elijah? Have they seen any photos of Moses and Elijah? So how could they recognize it was Moses and Elijah? Probably they would have heard the conversation between them. Alright? As in, they saw these two men standing with Jesus, and Peter, what does he say? Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what he was saying. I mean, he was too shocked. When he slept, he saw the normal Jesus that he knew. But when he woke up, he saw the real Jesus whom he never had seen. This is the real Jesus. What he saw was the normal Jesus whom he had seen. Now he sees the real Jesus whom he hasn't yet seen. And so it's such a shock to him. And that is why he did not know what to say. But he didn't want this experience to stop. That is why he wanted to make tents there. Like, Jesus, let this be there. We don't want it to just go. If it is possible for me to do something to make this stay, I'll do it. I'll make a tent. So while he was still speaking, what happened? What happened? In verse 5 of chapter 17 of Matthew, what does it say? What happened at that time? Matthew 17 verse 5. Yeah, a bright cloud appeared. Now, why would a bright cloud appear in here? Why is that happening? Do you notice one thing here? You should notice one thing in here. See, who is present with Jesus? Moses and Elijah. Okay. In Exodus 19, when God descends upon Mount Sinai to reveal the 10 Commandments and make a covenant with Israel, if you notice in that scenario, okay, the whole mountain was covered with a thick cloud. Okay, it was covered with a thick cloud, and that is the remembrance. Now, Moses was there then. Moses is here now. And the Yahweh God is still the same. Jesus is the Yahweh God, right? And so, when Jesus stands with Moses, the viewer, that's Peter, James, and John, their minds have to go back to Exodus 19, where God reveals himself, through the commandments. Here God is revealed through his Son. That's the only difference. There the 10 commandments are given. Here, the giver of the commandments is presented. And the same scenario happens, the cloud overshadowing them, and the voice coming from the cloud. This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. Now, why is this sort of an endorsement necessary? Because Jesus earlier in chapter 16 of Matthew, chapter 8 of Mark, and chapter 9 of Luke, He has already mentioned about something which is really spectacular, to follow him. And he said something, like, if anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father and of the glory of the holy angels. So Jesus is claiming to be someone special. Jesus is claiming to be someone special, somebody who has eternal implications. He is not just a normal person we are reading about here. He is somebody who has an eternal dimension to him. Somebody who is able to judge. He is claiming those things about himself, to follow him, to make him the pattern. Now that's something really spectacular. I mean, anyone can say, I am the American president, right? But there has to be proof. Now, if you say that you are the American president, what happens? We will all take you to the mental hospital and put you there. Because we know that you are telling a lie, but you don't know that you're telling a lie. So we have to put you into the mental asylum because you are delusional about what you are. Now, Jesus is telling about himself something that is really serious. Man's eternity is in his hands, and he wants somebody to love him till death. Take up his cross and follow him, deny it, give him the ultimate authority. He's making such huge claims. But those huge claims have truth. It is true. Whatever he said is true. And to show the disciples that it is true, Jesus takes them to the holy mountain and first he shows them who he really is. Till about 8 days back, they only saw the human. But now they see the divine human. The glorious form of Jesus which he has never ever shown till then. Now if you remove your mask and if I see, oh, it's Joe Biden, then I know that you're not lying. Until then, Joe Biden comes in Levin's mask. Understood? And then after that time, you put the mask back on, which is what happened after the transfiguration. So the removal of the mask, which shows Jesus' true glory, and the voice that came from heaven. So the Father's testifying to this. So the Father testifies that what the Son said is true. If he said to you, follow him, listen to him. I'm well pleased with him. Follow him. Understood? And by the way, these things are told to these 3 disciples, right? And these guys didn't want Jesus to die. Once they understood that he was a Messiah, he told them, the Son of Man has to go to Jerusalem and be mistreated by the religious leaders and be killed and will rise again on the 3rd day. This is what the Messiah is. This is the Messiah telling about what the Messiah is. And Peter says, no, Lord, that can't happen. And Jesus refutes that, and now the Father is also joining in refuting that. You listen to him. He is not listening to you. You listen to him. He is the Messiah. You are not. This is my beloved Son. I have sent him for this purpose. Well, they were talking about his death. Moses and Elijah were talking to Jesus about Jesus' death. So death is the plan of God. So combining all of these things together, you kind of have the bigger picture in here. And after this transfiguration scene, what happened? They heard this and fell face down to the ground, terrified. Okay? Why are they terrified? Because they got an up-close vision of Jesus, an up-close vision of God speaking to them audibly. In the Old Testament, when somebody knew that they heard God's voice and when they saw God in his glory, they were doubtful if they could live. Isaiah, in chapter 6 of Isaiah, woe is me, for I am undone. I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell among the people of unclean lips, because my eyes have seen the King of glory. This is what Isaiah understood when he saw God. seated on the throne. When Manoah and when Gideon, when they realized that they had seen God, they were afraid whether they would die or not. Understood? And that reaction is what you see in here. They were terrified because they heard God's voice, which they didn't hear otherwise. And when Jesus came and touched them, get up, he said. Do not be afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of dying. Yes, you saw God, you heard him speak, you saw my true glory, but don't be afraid. I have not come to kill. Okay? I have not come to kill. And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. So the vision is finished. So the disciples didn't tell this to anyone at the time what they had seen. So this is the only thing which the others came to know after the resurrection. Jesus warned them. Jesus gave them orders not to tell anyone what they had seen until the Son of Man had risen from the dead. And they again discussed, what does the rising from the dead mean? As in, why are they discussing that? The Jews had the idea of a resurrection. Daniel 12. The resurrection of the righteous and the resurrection of the wicked. But that is going to happen in the last day. They didn't expect that to be happening immediately. Okay? So, these disciples are discussing. Don't tell this to anyone until the rising of the dead has happened. Until the Son of Man is risen from the dead. That will happen in the last day. Will I be even alive to even talk about this? That's what their minds are thinking. Rising of the dead, yeah, we know. We have seen from the Bible, from the Old Testament, but what does that exactly mean? We know that it's happening in the last day, when the world will end. I'm not going to be alive until then. What is the point in discussing that? Okay. So when they were coming down, the disciples asked him, why then do the teachers of the law say that Elijah must come first? Jesus replied, to be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. The same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer in their hands. Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist. So the Elijah about whom Matthew or Malachi wrote. Huh? This is the last chapter, yes. Malachi 4 verse 5. That part is talking about John the Baptist. Now they are clear. Okay. Why did they ask about Elijah? Because they saw Elijah right now. Okay. So they came down from the mountain. And when they came down from the mountain, what do they see? Now we are reading Matthew 17 verse 14 to 21. And we are reading Mark 9 verse 14 to 29. And Luke 9 verse 37 to 43. Okay. Now, at this point, there was a large crowd around them. He had come down from the mountain, and there was a large crowd around them, and the other disciples were there, the other 9 of them. The other 9 disciples were there, and the teachers of the law were arguing with them. Now, what were they arguing? The teachers of the law were always arguing with Jesus, and now they argue with Jesus' disciples. So, what is the problem that they are trying to bring here? Okay. The problem here is that a man in the crowd answered, Teacher, okay, now there is one guy whose son is sick. That man knelt before Jesus and said, Have mercy on my son, Lord. He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He has seizures, meaning he has what we call today epilepsy, or in Malayalam we call it avasmara. Okay, so how did this thing come? Mark 9 verse 17 says, I brought you my son, who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. So Mark gives that sort of a extra detail there. So this guy has epilepsy or avasmaram, and this guy can't speak because of the evil spirit. But even though he can't speak, Luke 9 verse 39 says he suddenly screams. So there is so much of problems with this guy, with this child. Okay, this child has seizures and is suffering greatly. And this child has this seizure because of an evil spirit that has robbed him of speech. Meaning, an evil spirit has made him mute. And the coming of the spirit creates a panic in this child. How does it, what does it do? And the coming of the spirit throws him into convulsion so that he foams at his mouth, at the mouth. People who have epilepsy, you see that spit comes from their mouth when they are struggling like this. Okay? It scarcely ever leaves him and is destroying him. And how long has this child has been suffering? Now we'll talk about that. Matthew says he often falls into the fire or into the water. So let's recap. Seizures resulting in foaming in the mouth. He can't speak. And when the spirit troubles him, he screams. Okay. He throws himself into the fire, into the water, just to get rid of this, to die, just so that this affliction might stop. Okay. And how long has this child been like this? Since childhood. Mark 9 verse 21. This has been a lifelong affliction for this child. So his speech is affected. He is suicidal. His health is very bad. And he has been chronically ill. Quite a bad situation. And before Jesus had come down the mountain, the disciples couldn't cast this demon out. You see this. Matthew 17 verse 16. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. I begged your disciples to drive it out, but they could not. Now my question is, have the disciples driven out demons earlier? Yes. In fact, in Mark 3 and verse 14, he appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. So the reason that they were appointed as the 12 is that whatever Jesus did, they will do. But now they can't do it. They have done it. They were happy. Lord, even demons are subject to us in your name. Luke 10. But now they can't do. Well, we'll reach as to why they can't do. Okay. Now, the failure of the disciples to cast out this demon is now used or misused by the teachers of the law, because the teachers of the law have a hatred for Jesus, and now since Jesus' disciples can't do this, they try to use this opportunity to malign Jesus. These are Jesus' disciples. If they can't do, what is so special about Jesus? They already have an enmity with Jesus, and so they want to use this opportunity to put him down, and that's why they argue with the disciples. So why are the disciples not able to drive it out? Well, in Matthew 17 verse 19, the disciples asked that question in private. Why couldn't we drive it out? He replied, because you have so little faith. And Mark says in 9 and verse 28 and 29, why couldn't we drive it out? This kind can only come out only by prayer, and in your footnotes, and fasting. Yeah. Okay. So the problem with the disciples is that they didn't have prayer and fasting, and they didn't have faith. So how can you have faith when you pray? And why do you pray? Because you have faith. And these two things are related. Understood? Prayer and faith are essentials for these disciples. They used to do that, and earlier they could drive out demons. But now they don't do it as much as they should be doing. See, Jesus on the mountain of transfiguration. Before the transfiguration happened, what is he doing? You remember what he was doing? Luke's Gospel. Others were sleeping. What was Jesus doing? Praying. So, Jesus, for him, this is an ongoing thing. Before every major thing, what does he do? Pray. So, he has complete and full faith in God, and he prays. The disciples used to pray, but now their battery is down. Understood? Jesus puts his battery on full charge. These guys are on 25%. And which is why the functions don't work. In a mobile, when the battery charge reaches 20%, what happens? The mobile, does it work with full light and all that? No. The function of the mobile becomes less. You have to recharge it. Put it on the mobile, recharge, and you'll get the charge happening. That is why these guys didn't have faith. So, what does Jesus call? Now, there are three groups here. Jesus' disciples here, the 9 of them, the boy's father, and the teachers of the law. One thing together in all of them is that there is no faith in all of them. So, you unbelieving and perverse generation. So, why is this? Why is Jesus calling this father also unbelieving and perverse? Now, Matthew doesn't say anything, but Mark says something. Oh, by the way, this boy is deaf also. Verse 25, Mark 9 verse 25. You deaf and mute spirit. So, full problem. It's full problem. Verse 22. It has often thrown him into fire and water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. If you can do anything. And your disciples can't do anything. If you can, do help us. That's why Jesus asked him, if you can, verse 23. എനിക്ക് പറ്റുമെങ്കിലോ? Everything is possible for one who believes. Okay? Everything is possible for one who believes. And then immediately the boy's father, repented of his unbelief. Lord, I believe. I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. So, this boy's father also had an unbelief that was caused by the disciples. Understood? So, the disciples' lack of faith The boy's father's lack of faith and the teachers of the law, their lack of faith. The teachers of the law, they have zero faith. They don't care about Jesus. But they are now using Jesus' disciples' failure to use it against Jesus. And because Jesus' disciples failed in faith, this man also facing unbelief. So everything is now bad. So all of these people are expressing unbelief, and that is where Jesus targets. You unbelieving and perverse generation, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. Okay. Now, even when the boy was coming, what happened? When the demon saw Jesus, what happened? Now, verse 41 of chapter 9 of Luke. 42. Even while the boy was coming, the demon threw him to the ground in a convulsion. So even then, demons, when in some movies, when some ghosts see the cross, or when devil sees the cross, what happens? They are afraid. Yeah. So in the same way, when the demon saw Jesus, he was again trying to do the maximum damage to this boy. Okay. And when Jesus rebuked the spirit, I command you, come out of him, never enter him again. So when Jesus said that, what did the demon do? Verse 26 of Mark 9. The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. I said, why is it shrieking? Because until then, this demon had a home. Okay, Malayalam is കഴുത്തിന് പിടിച്ച് പുറത്ത് തള്ളി. Caught him by the neck and throw him out of the house. And since he doesn't have that, the spirit doesn't have any more home in this body, it is crying so much, and then leaving. So maximum damage done and then left. And people thought that the boy was dead. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said he was dead. But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up to his feet, and he stood up. Okay. So after this, they were all amazed at the greatness of God, and the disciples asked him, why couldn't we drive it out? This can come out only by prayer and fasting. So this is what one thing we need to understand. Just because we prayed yesterday, and just because we read the Bible yesterday, it doesn't mean that we will not fall into temptations today, or it doesn't mean that we will have a victorious Christian life today. Did you understand? Just because you won yesterday, it doesn't mean you will win today. To win today, you must have a renewed dependence on God. Okay? Ongoing dependence on God in prayer, and sitting before God's presence by reading His Word in an ongoing manner. That is what God demands from His people. Understood? How could Jesus continue doing miracles? And how did the disciples stop being effective? It's this. This is the reason. Okay? And then we now come to Matthew 17, verse 22 to 27. And what we will do now is we'll just deal with this, and then we will just jump to Mark and Luke for completing a few other passages. Okay. Now, Jesus, for the second time in his ministry, he revealed to his disciples in Matthew 17, verse 22. The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised to life. And the disciples are filled with grief. Why grief? Because they wanted a killer Messiah. They didn't want a dying Messiah. Understood? They wanted the uh, freedom of Israel from the Romans. They didn't want a king who will be killed. But they should have realized, they should have not forgotten that Genesis 3 verse 15 is about the seed of the woman being bitten by the serpent, and then in that biting, the serpent's head is crushed. That is what they should have remembered, but they didn't. Yeah. So now we move to Matthew 17 verse 24 to 27. Now this event is only recorded in Matthew's Gospel. Only, I think, because it's the tax involved in here. Because Matthew is a tax collector. Wherever tax is involved, Matthew is there. Now in one soap advertisement, okay, Lifebuoy എവിടെയോ അവിടെയാണ് ആരോഗ്യം. Wherever there is Lifebuoy, there is health. It's a caption. Okay. So in the same way, wherever there is Matthew, you will find tax involved. Well, this event is not there in any other Gospels. So after Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma temple tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" Yes, he does. Now, what is this temple tax all about? Okay. To understand this, we would have to go back to Exodus chapter 30. I think it's 30. Let's go there. Exodus. Yeah. Exodus 30, verse 11 to 16. Okay, 11 to 16. Now there you have the atonement money. When you take a census of the Israelites to count them, each one must pay the Lord a ransom for his life at the time he was counted. Then no plague will come on them when you number them. Each one who crosses over to those already counted is to give a half shekel, according to the sanctuary shekel, which weighs 20 gerahs. This half shekel is an offering to the Lord. All who cross over those 20 years old or more are to give an offering to the Lord. Everyone has to give. And this amount will be used for the service of the tent of meeting. So this is to be counted when this is to be taken when the census is counted. So any one of the Israelites who are 20 years old and above have to pay this tax. Purpose for the temple tax, temple maintenance. Okay. So doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? Well, that's the question here. And yes, he does, Peter said. When Peter came to the house, Jesus was the first to speak. So what do you think, Simon? From whom do kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others? From whom the taxes are collected? From others. Peter answered. Then the children are exempt, Jesus said to him. Well, why did Jesus say that? Because the temple, whom does it belong to? To God. And who is Jesus? The Son of God. So Jesus being the Son of God, does he have to pay the temple tax? No. Temple tax is from others. So Jesus technically isn't liable. He's not liable to pay the temple tax because it's his temple. He is Yahweh. And so the temple belongs to him, and so he doesn't need to pay the temple tax. But verse 27, so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake and throw out your line. if you have not forgotten how to fish. Because for the last one year or so, Peter hasn't gone back to fishing. Correct? Okay. Go to the lake, throw out your line, take the first fish you catch, open its mouth, and you will find 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours. So Jesus is not, it's not necessary for Jesus to pay tax because the temple is his. But he's now paying tax. Why? Because he is identifying himself as a man. He is also a man. See, he has come to fulfill all righteousness. Understood? Since he has come to fulfill all righteousness, as a human being, as a covenant person of the society of Israel, he has to fulfill all the rules that a man should do, right? And one among that involves the paying of the temple tax. Okay? And so, why Jesus does this payment of the temple tax here is that as a human being, he fulfills all the requirements that a human being should do. The temple is his, but since he has come into this temple as a man, he fulfills all the righteousness that a man should do. That is what we see here. Understood? Peter has to do that because he's only a man. Jesus needn't do it because he is God, but he does it because he is also man. So, do not cause offense. Offense to whom? Offense to God. Because he has come to fulfill all the law about himself. So all the requirements, all the commandments of God, he came to fulfill. And that fulfillment is seen here. Okay? Now, the next thing here we need to see is that when it comes to doing something which God wants him to do, Jesus is so poor that he doesn't have enough money immediately. For example, here he doesn't have a 2 drachma coin to fulfill his tax. If you ask him, Jesus, where is your money for the tax? He doesn't have money on him. Not because he is carrying a mobile with UPI ID. Because he doesn't have money. He was born into a poor family. I told you, right? When Mary and Joseph went to dedicate him, what did they offer? Turtle doves, which is the poor man's offering. So he doesn't have money. All the money that he is getting in ministry, what is he doing? He's giving it to the poor. He doesn't keep any money. Which is why at this time he requests Peter to go back to fishing. Take that fish, you will find 2 coins there. So he is experiencing the poverty that man experiences, and he is also in control of the fish in the sea. You see, both these things are coming together. Don't forget that. Okay, his divine nature is seen in the control that he has over the fish. He knows which fish will have 2 coins. Maybe I don't know how did that end up in the sea. Those 2 coins. Somehow it ended up there, and he finds those 2 coins. He knows which fish will have 2 coins, and how that will get into Peter's fishing rod. All that he knows. There is his divine nature. At the same time, his human nature is such that he is experiencing poverty that he doesn't have immediate money on him. Huh? What? See, we don't have the omniscience or the omnipotence that Jesus has. So for us, God has given us something called common sense. Common sense is not common. See, God has given us God has given us enough money, so it is up to us to use it wisely. It is up to us to use it properly. Where to spend, how much to spend, when to spend, all of these things we should know. So, keeping a reserve for us for something that we will have as an expense is not sin. Okay? But here in this case, Jesus is going through this extreme poverty thing, or he's going through a situation where he doesn't have something to fulfill his part of the law. It's something which most people experience. In fact, the Old Testament, there is an Old Testament prophecy where the king comes on the donkey. Zechariah 9. Zechariah 9. But Jesus doesn't have enough money to have a donkey. So he borrows one from someone. We'll come to that. To fulfill, the king doesn't have money to fulfill his prophecy. So he is borrowing donkey from somebody else. He is the one who created the donkey. If you look at it, Jesus is the creator, right? The creator is borrowing what is actually his to fulfill a prophecy that is written about him. Here also, he doesn't have money on him, but he is borrowing something else. He is taking someone else's effort to fulfill his part of the law. That's what we need to understand. So his divine nature and his human nature are perfectly matched at this point here. So what did we learn here? Two things. One, even though he is the son, he chose to be obedient. Okay, he never did anything that violated the calling that he had. What is his calling? To be our representative. And being a representative of human beings, especially in Israel, as an Israelite, he was supposed to pay the temple tax. He didn't say, I am the son. Why do you ask me? He didn't deny his sonship. When he went to the temple in age 12, what did he say? Didn't he know that I had to be in my father's house? So he knows that he is in his father's house. He knows who he is. But he also knows what he has come to do. That is something which you should also think about. Okay. Yeah. Hmm. If you know who lost the money, return it to him. If you do not know whose money it is, you can either leave it there or give it to the police. Huh? Can't use. It's not your money. Ultimately, all money belongs to him also. Him only, right? Well, the this money is not found in somebody's property. It's in some fish's mouth. Fish is his creation. So that the sea is his, and all that is in the sea is his. And that belongs to him. Unfortunately, when Christ grew up, he didn't learn fishing. Or maybe, okay, that's one thing we should understand here. So the money ultimately does everything in the world is God's possession, right? And the fish belongs to God. Hmm? He pays the tax, yes. Yeah. Because if he doesn't do that, See, as a human being, if he doesn't do that, then he can't be 100% righteous. To be 100% righteous before God means to avoid what God hates all the time and to do all the time what God loves. Understood? To be 100% right before God, a person must avoid all what God hates and he must do all what God loves. In which this is also there. You got me? And so even this small commandment, he doesn't uh, avoid. He does that. Like he doesn't say I am superstar or I am this or I am that. I am the son. I by this temple is mine. No, it is his temple, but he has come to represent us, and he doesn't take away his eyes off us because even we have to be saved. Even we have to be saved, and so even this small thing he fulfills. Okay, yeah. If you got that money, don't use that money. It's not yours. Huh? Yeah, it's see, because your conscience will not be right. It's not your money. Don't use it. See, this is where we go back to Matthew 4 and Luke 4, the temptation. At the end of the 40 days, Jesus is hungry and he needs food. And Satan tells him, if you are hungry and if you are the Son of God, change these stones to bread. Jesus' immediate need is attacked. And so here is the way Satan is attacking us. He's giving us something which doesn't belong to us. But at that time, we don't pattern our behavior based on what we need at that point. We pattern our behavior based on what comes from the mouth of God. That's what Jesus did. And anyone who claims to live in Him, in God, must live as Jesus did. So we can't have that money. It's not us. Satan will say, take it, take it. But Jesus says, no, shouldn't take it. If somebody gives us money, fine. Now then, it is our money. Understood? Yeah. Yeah. Simon had to pay tax because he had to pay tax. Because he's the citizen of Israel. Huh? Yeah. Yeah, he had four drummers to be paid, two for Simon, two for Jesus. And Simon also has no other option because he also quit his job and followed, right? Remember, once they were going to the synagogue on the Sabbath and they were eating some grains during the wayside. So once they quit their jobs, don't have regular income. So Simon also doesn't have money on him. Okay, and whatever money they get, Jesus spends for ministry purposes, for their food, for giving to the poor and everything. He doesn't keep, for him everything is, if you get money today, tomorrow is zero balance. Or within a few days, it will be zero balance. And part of that being zero balance is because of Judas. Occasionally this guy will take. Understood? Yeah. So we will take a pause in Matthew 17. We'll just stop there and we'll continue with Mark's Gospel, chapter 9. So in Mark, we have finished off quite a lot of things in Mark. And we stopped till 9 verse 29, and we will continue with 9 verse 30. So Jesus and others left that place and went through Galilee. Jesus did not want anyone to know where they were, because he was teaching his disciples. He said to them, so this is the second time, as you already read earlier, okay? They did not understand what he meant and were afraid to ask about it. Then they came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, what were you arguing on the road? But they kept quiet. Why? Because they were always arguing who is the greatest. Okay, now we'll just uh, touch upon this in Matthew 18. Matthew 18, this passage is there. Matthew 18 was 1 to 9. Yeah. If it is gold, no, it can't be. Ah, that's wrong. But that's wrong. That's fully wrong. See, Christians are not meant to function like dacoits. You know what dacoits are? Daku. Okay? Christians are not meant to be like dacoits. Christians are meant to earn their money through hard work. Work and earn. That's the pattern. Okay? People like Gabbar Singh can take like that. I'm talking about Shole's Gabbar Singh, not the Gabbar is back thing. We are not Robin Hood, right? Taking money from the rich and giving it to the poor, we are not Robin Hood. Handing it over to the police is what we should do. But make sure that the police doesn't think that we stole it. Understood? Because if you take this money and give it to the police might think you stole it from them. So be wise in handling that. So we are not supposed to do that also. I mean, we are not supposed to take that and give to the poor. We have to give to the poor from our money, not from someone else's money, without even their knowledge. What we don't know? Whose money it is? Then give it to the police. They'll let them use it. See, what they do with that is not our problem. What we do with that is our problem. If it is me, I will leave it there and go. Leave it and go. Or give it to the police and go. Well, that's not right. Yeah. We need to leave it and go. Don't have to take it. It's not our money. We didn't earn that. So it's not right for us to take that money. So we'll continue this. And next period, we will just touch upon Matthew 18 verse 1 to 9. Oh, not 1 to 9. 1 to 4. 1 to 5. Matthew 18 verse 1 to 5. Mark 9 verse 33 to 37. And let me just see if there is a parallel passage in there for Luke. Yeah, Luke 9 verse 46 to 48. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the next period, 11 o'clock. Welcome back. Okay.